Of course, based on your detailed request, I will now generate the story. To accommodate your inputs, the narrative will be set in the USA as requested, while drawing thematic and structural inspiration from your rich synopsis. The story will be presented in English. Title: They Told Me I Wasn't Good Enough. Now I'm leading a successful business. The year was 2014, and the air in Brooklyn felt different from the filtered, predictable air of her small Ohio town. It was thick, with 1,000 competing smells. Roasted nuts from a street cart, the faint hint of rain on hot asphalt, exhaust fumes, and the intoxicating aroma of possibility. For Anna, it was the scent of a terrifying, exhilarating freedom. She stood in the center of her shoebox apartment in Bushwick, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes that seemed to mock her ambition. Each one was a testament to the life she'd left behind, the daughter of practical, small-town shopkeepers who measured success in balanced ledgers and paid off mortgages. They loved her, fiercely and unconditionally, but their love was laced with a pragmatism that often felt like a cage. The echo of her father's gentle, concerned voice was a constant hum in her mind, a chorus that had been playing since her childhood. Just be realistic, Annie. It's a tough world out there. It was his version of a phrase she'd heard in countless forms, from teachers, from friends, from the quiet judgment in the eyes of her hometown neighbors. They all translated to the same crushing whisper: "You're not good enough for something bigger." That whisper was the ghost that had chased her all the way to New York. It was the reason she was here, and the reason she was paralyzed by a soul-crushing wave of imposter syndrome. Her idea, when she spoke it aloud, sounded fragile, almost naive. She wanted to start a business curating and delivering gift boxes, filled exclusively with products from local, independent Brooklyn artisans. It wasn't just about selling things, it was about selling stories. The story of the potter in Williamsburg, the chocolatier in Red Hook, the candle maker in Greenpoint. It was a service built on connection in a city that often felt impossibly disconnected. But as she stared at her meager savings account, the whisper grew louder. A phone call from her mother, Maria, didn't help. "Are you eating, honey? It's so expensive there. Your father and I just worry. That little store of ours, it's safe. It's real." Anna loved her mother's voice. The warmth and the worry all tangled together, but today it felt like an anchor threatening to pull her under. She assured her she was fine, that she had a plan, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. After hanging up, the silence of the apartment was deafening. She sank onto a box, the city's relentless energy outside, feeling like a force she could never hope to match. The idea wasn't just simple, it was stupid. Who would pay for this? Who was she to think she could pull it off? Just as the despair began to crystallize, her phone buzzed again. It was Leo, her best friend since childhood, the one person who had followed her from Ohio, not out of shared ambition, but out of unwavering loyalty. He was the pragmatic anchor to her creative kite, a coder who saw the world in logical systems and clean data. He walked in 20 minutes later with 2 slices of pizza on a paper plate, his presence immediately grounding her. He didn't offer platitudes, he listened, his brow furrowed as she poured out her heart, the grand vision and the crippling self-doubt all coming out in a rush. "Okay," he said, after she finally fell silent. "Let's break it down. Your overhead is just your rent and the cost of the first box. Your supply chain is a subway ride away. Your market is, well, it's everywhere. The idea isn't stupid, Anna. It's just unfunded and untested." He pulled out a notebook. "So who's first? Who is the one person we absolutely need to get on board to make this feel real?" Anna thought for a moment, her mind racing past the trendy, established brands to a memory from a weekend market. An elderly woman with hands gnarled by arthritis, who sold the most incredible hand-poured soy candles, each sent a complex poem. She was gruff, skeptical of everyone, and her work was phenomenal. "Mrs. Gable," Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. "If I can convince her, then I'll know it's possible." The next day, Anna stood before the woman's stall at the Brooklyn Flea, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air was cool, a crisp autumn Saturday. She gave her pitch, her voice trembling at first, then steadying as her passion took over. Mrs. Gable watched her over her spectacles, her expression unreadable. When Anna finished, the old woman was silent for a long moment. She picked up a candle that smelled of cardamom and cedar, turning it over in her hands. "People don't care about stories anymore," she said, her voice raspy. "They just want cheap things, fast." Anna's heart sank. It was the same dismissal, the same world-weary cynicism she was fighting against. "I think you're wrong," Anna said, surprising herself with her own conviction. "I think people are desperate for them." Another silence stretched. Then Mrs. Gable sighed, a slow release of air that seemed to carry decades of disappointment. "1 box," she said, not looking at Anna. "You can have my candles for 1 box. We'll see if you're a fool or not." Anna walked away from the market, clutching the small paper bag with 2 candles inside as if it were a treasure. The weight in her hands was nothing, but the weight lifted from her soul was immeasurable. It wasn't a business yet, not really. It was just a promise. But for the first time since she'd arrived, the roar of the city sounded less like a threat and more like a welcome. By 2017, the business, now officially named Borough Baskets, was a living, breathing, chaotic thing that had consumed Anna's entire life. Her apartment was no longer a home, but a perpetually cluttered fulfillment center. Stacks of recycled cardboard boxes teetered precariously in the living room, the scent of lavender soap from one supplier mingling with the rich dark chocolate from another. Sleep was a luxury, and meals were often snatched standing up, but Anna had never felt more alive. The initial breakthrough with Mrs. Gable had become a blueprint. She and Leo spent every weekend pounding the pavement, exploring street fairs, farmers' markets, and tiny, hidden-away studios. Their pitch was no longer just about a business idea. It was about building a coalition of the small, a network of creators who, like them, were trying to carve out a space in a world built for giants. Some vendors dismissed them instantly, too jaded or too busy to listen. But many, seeing the genuine passion in Anna's eyes and the quiet competence in Leo's, said yes. They were tired of competing with mass-produced goods, tired of being invisible. Borough Baskets offered them a new spotlight. Leo, in his element, had built a sleek, simple website and was meticulously managing their shoestring budget, his spreadsheets becoming the gospel they lived by. He was the one who figured out the most efficient subway routes for pickups to save on transport costs, and who negotiated with a local printer for a discount on packaging materials in exchange for a feature on their blog. They were a perfect partnership of heart and head, of vision and execution. Their first real test came during a sweltering July street festival in Park Slope. They had invested almost everything they had into a proper stall, a canvas tent, and enough inventory for 100 baskets. The morning was a dizzying success. The sun beat down, the air thick with humidity, and a steady stream of curious customers flowed past their table. People were drawn in by the beautiful eclectic mix of products and stayed to hear the stories Anna told about each artisan. They weren't just selling gift boxes, they were selling a piece of Brooklyn's soul. By early afternoon, they had sold more than half their stock. Then the sky turned a bruised purple. The wind picked up, whipping napkins and business cards into the air. Within minutes, a torrential downpour erupted, sending festival-goers scattering for cover. Water poured through a small tear in their tent's roof, dripping directly onto a stack of hand-printed stationery. Anna and Leo scrambled, using their own bodies to shield the delicate products, their frantic movements a clumsy dance against the storm. They were soaked, their stall was a wreck, and a significant portion of their most fragile inventory was ruined. As the rain finally eased, leaving the streets slick and steaming, Anna looked at the mess. and the old whisper of doubt returned with a vengeance. She felt a tear of frustration mix with the rain on her cheek. Then the vendor from the next stall, a cheerful man who sold hot sauce, came over with a roll of duct tape and helped them patch their tent. The woman who sold jewelry from across the aisle brought them hot coffee in paper cups. They saw the desperation in Anna's eyes and didn't offer pity. They offered solidarity. They had all been there. They had all faced the sudden storm, the unexpected disaster, the feeling of being one piece of bad luck away from giving up. It was in that moment of shared struggle that Anna understood the true meaning of what she was building. It wasn't just a supply chain, it was a community. That winter, armed with a year of modest but consistent sales data, they decided it was time to seek a small business loan. They needed to move out of the apartment and into a proper workspace. They put on their best clothes and walked into the sterile, intimidating lobby of a major bank. The loan officer, a man with a polite but dismissive smile, listened to their pitch, glanced at their numbers, and rejected them without a second thought. "Your business model is unconventional," he said, the word hanging in the air like an insult. "Your reliance on hyper-local small-batch suppliers presents a significant risk." They left the bank, the cold January wind feeling like a physical blow. The system wasn't built for them. It was built for scale, for predictability, for everything they weren't. The rejection was brutal, but the community they had nurtured became their safety net. Mrs. Gable, hearing the story, connected them with the manager of a local credit union in her neighborhood. This new meeting was different. The office was smaller, the coffee was stale, but the woman across the desk, Maria, had eyes that listened. She understood what it meant to support the local economy because she was a part of it. She saw not just the risk in their model, but the immense loyalty and purpose it generated. 2 weeks later, they were approved for a loan. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough. It was enough for a small workshop space in Sunset Park, enough to hire their first part-time employee, enough to turn their clever workarounds and DIY solutions into a legitimate growing enterprise. As they signed the papers, Leo, the man of numbers, looked at Anna, a rare, unguarded smile on his face. "You know," he said, "I never factored the value of our community into the balance sheet, but it turns out it was our biggest asset all along." The move to the Sunset Park workshop in 2020 marked a new era for Borough Baskets. The space was a testament to their journey, a raw industrial loft with high ceilings and large windows that flooded the room with afternoon light. It was a space they filled with salvaged workbenches, shelves built by Leo on weekends, and the constant buzzing energy of a dream taking flight. The business grew organically, fueled by word of mouth and the kind of authentic customer loyalty that couldn't be bought with advertising. A feature on a popular Brooklyn culture blog sent a tidal wave of orders their way. And for the first time, their biggest problem wasn't finding customers, but keeping up with demand. They hired 2 more people from the neighborhood, and the workshop became a vibrant hub of activity, a place that smelled of cardboard, coffee, and collective purpose. Anna found her role shifting. She was no longer just the curator and storyteller. She was a leader, responsible for the livelihoods of her team and the success of the dozens of small businesses that relied on her. The weight of this responsibility was immense, but it was a good weight. It quieted the nagging voice of the imposter inside her, replacing it with a sense of profound duty. It was during this period of rapid, chaotic growth that they received an email that would change everything. It was from a senior associate at a high-powered venture capital firm in Manhattan, one known for aggressively scaling promising startups. They wanted a meeting. The contrast between their workshop and the VC firm's office couldn't have been more stark. They left the comforting, creative clutter of Sunset Park and traveled to a silent, air-conditioned tower in Midtown that scraped the sky. Their meeting was with a woman named Victoria Vance. She was impeccably dressed, sharp, and exuded an aura of calculated power. She had their analytics projected on a massive screen, her laser pointer flitting across graphs that showed their impressive growth curve and customer retention rates. "Your brand has a compelling narrative, Ms. Flores," Victoria said, her voice smooth and precise. "Authenticity is a highly marketable asset right now. We see a clear path to a national scale." She then laid out her vision. It was a vision of explosive growth, of borough baskets in every major city, of optimized logistics, and a massively expanded supply chain. It was also a vision that involved replacing their local small-batch artisans with larger, more efficient suppliers who could handle volume. She spoke of standardized products, of centralizing their operations, of trimming the fat. The fat, Anna realized with a sickening lurch, was everything she had built. The personal relationships, the quirky and sometimes unreliable nature of her suppliers, the very soul of the company. It was a beautiful, seductive, and terrifying proposal. The investment figure Victoria mentioned was life-changing, enough to guarantee their financial security for years to come. Walking out of the glass tower and back into the humid chaos of the Manhattan streets, Anna felt a profound sense of whiplash. Leo was quiet, his mind clearly racing, processing the numbers and possibilities. Back in the familiar territory of their workshop, the tension between them was palpable. "Think of what we could do with that money, Anna," Leo said, his voice a mix of awe and excitement. "We could offer our employees full health benefits, a 401k. We could pay our suppliers more, and on time, every time. We wouldn't have to worry about making rent for the next decade. This is the dream." Anna heard him, and a part of her, the part that remembered the constant anxiety of near-zero bank balances, agreed, but her heart rebelled. "Did you hear what she was saying, Leo? She wants to gut the company. She wants to turn us into everything we fought against. We wouldn't be telling their stories anymore. We'd be just another faceless box company." Their conversation escalated into the first real argument of their partnership. Leo accused her of being too emotional, of letting her idealism jeopardize their future. Anna accused him of forgetting why they started this in the first place, of being blinded by the money. The conflict laid bare the fundamental difference in their perspectives. He saw a problem to be solved with logic and resources, while she saw a mission to be protected at all costs. The argument left a rift between them, a cold silence that felt more frightening than any bank rejection. That night, Anna sat alone in the workshop, long after everyone had gone home. She looked around at the boxes waiting to be packed, each one a curated collection of someone's passion and hard work. Victoria's offer felt like a test, the ultimate manifestation of the world telling her that her way wasn't good enough, that to be truly successful, she had to become something else, something harder, colder, more efficient. The loneliness she felt was profound. She had fought so hard to build this community, only to feel utterly alone when facing the decision that could define its future forever. The week following the argument with Leo was one of the most difficult of Anna's life. The vibrant energy of the workshop felt muted, the silence between her and her co-founder a heavy blanket over everything. She found herself moving on autopilot, packing boxes and managing logistics, while her mind endlessly replayed Victoria's proposal and Leo's frustrated words. She needed clarity, a reminder of what she was fighting for. On a crisp Saturday morning in 2023, she left the workshop and took the subway to the Brooklyn Flea, the place where it had all begun. The market was a riot of color, sound, and life. She walked through the familiar aisles, the air filled with the smells of grilled food and old books. She saw Mrs. Gable at her stall, her gnarled hands arranging her candles with practiced care. The old woman spotted her and gave a rare, small smile. "Heard you're playing with the big suits in Manhattan," she said, her voice as raspy as ever. Anna just nodded, unsure what to say. Mrs. Gable wiped her hands on her apron. "Let me tell you something, girl. I've had offers to put my candles in big chain stores. They wanted me to change the wax, use cheaper scents to cut costs. I told them to get lost. My name is on that label. My hands made it. Some things are worth more than a bigger paycheck." She said it so simply, with such unshakable conviction, that it felt like a lighthouse beam cutting through Anna's fog. As she walked away, she knew the old woman was right. Meanwhile, Leo was doing his own soul-searching, but his was in the language he understood best: spreadsheets. He built financial models, projecting their growth with Victoria's investment versus their current trajectory. The numbers for the VC-backed plan were dazzling, a steep, beautiful curve rocketing upwards. But as he stared at the data, his mind kept drifting away from the cells and figures. He thought of the day the storm hit their stall and how the hot sauce vendor had helped them. He thought of the relieved tears in the eyes of their first employee when they offered her a stable job. He thought of the email from a customer who said their basket, sent to a grieving friend, had been a small moment of light in a dark time. None of that had a numerical value. There was no cell on the spreadsheet for community or purpose. For the first time, his pragmatic mind had to concede that the most important metrics of their success were the ones he couldn't quantify. He realized Anna wasn't being idealistic. She was protecting the core asset he had failed to properly value. That evening, as Anna was locking up the workshop, her phone rang. It was her mother, Maria. Anna braced herself for the usual litany of worries, but her mother's tone was different. "Your father and I were talking," Maria said, her voice steady and clear. "We saw the article about you on that website. We don't understand all of it, this business you've built, but we understand you. You were always the one who wouldn't let go of an idea. We're proud of you, Annie. Whatever you decide to do, we know it will be the right thing for you." The simple, unconditional acceptance was the final piece Anna needed. Her mother, the voice of caution and tradition, had finally learned to trust her daughter's unconventional path. The next morning, Leo was waiting for her at the workshop, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You were right," he said, before she could even speak. "I got so focused on fixing the problem of being small that I forgot our size is what makes us special. The soul of this company is not for sale." The relief that washed over Anna was immense, repairing the rift between them instantly. They were a team again. They scheduled another meeting with Victoria Vance. This time, they didn't walk into her office as hopeful supplicants, but as confident founders. They turned down her offer. Instead, they made a counter-proposal, a much smaller investment structured as a loan in exchange for a minority stake and a single advisory seat on their board. They laid out their own vision for slow, sustainable growth, a plan that prioritized their people and their principles over explosive profits. They wanted her expertise in logistics, not her mandate to change their DNA. They expected to be laughed out of the room. Victoria listened intently, her face impassive. When they finished, she leaned back in her chair. "For the past week," she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips, "I've been watching the market. Authenticity, as I said, is a marketable asset, but it's also incredibly fragile. The moment you try to mass-produce it, it vanishes. Your model, while inefficient by traditional standards, has built a brand that is practically immune to competition. It was a test. I wanted to see if you understood what you truly had." She agreed to their terms. The final scene of their startup drama wasn't in a skyscraper or at a champagne-fueled launch party. It was a few months later, on a busy Tuesday, in their now expanded Sunset Park workshop. Leo was teaching a new hire from the neighborhood their inventory system. Anna was writing a personalized note to include in a basket, the late afternoon sun streaming through the window. The space was filled with the happy noise of tape guns, laughter, and a shared sense of purpose. Anna looked around at the beautiful, controlled chaos she had created, and she felt a profound sense of peace. The whisper that had haunted her for years, the one that said she wasn't good enough, was finally gone. It had been replaced by the steady, confident hum of her own success, built not on someone else's terms, but entirely on her own.